This is an oral history review conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
Wayne Macdonald. I live in Sandwich.
Okay. What made you want to join the military?
It's something that I had always really thought about growing up, as an extra challenge towards becoming an adult. And I had an experience in college where I realized that I might have needed a little bit more time before I went back into college. So I took, after my first year, my freshman year of college, I decided to join the Marine Corps right after September 11th.
What made you want to do your specific job?
I joined the reserves, and when you join the reserves, you get to pick a job or an MOS that is at a reserve station that's near you, because you have to drive to it. So originally I picked to be crash fire and rescue, which is like a fire department at a runway, essentially, for like an aircraft rescue or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I thought I was going to be doing that out of in Chicopee, Mass. And then when I went to you go to it's called the MEPS building, so you go there and take a physical and everything like that before you go off to the first part of the training, to the Paris Island, to the recruit training. So right before, when I went there for the physical, they said that my eyesight wasn't good enough for that job, so they gave me a list of others to pick from. So it's what you're qualified for based on the test that you take. It's the ASVAB test, so it's like your military like aptitudes. So you qualify for different jobs based on what you score high on the test. So they gave me a list of jobs that I qualified for that were also near me, and one of them that sounded cool was the armor. So there's a lot of working with your hands and repairing, and it was new to me because I never grew up using weapons or shooting or anything like that. So this was all like a new part of my life, a lot of learning, but I thought it would be pretty neat, and I ended up loving the school and the training, and I love working with my hands anyway, so it was something that was a good fit.
Did you grow up in Sandwich?
Yep, I grew up in Sandwich. I moved to Sandwich in middle school, and lived on Camp Burgess. It's a South Shore Y camp, and my mother worked there, and so my brothers and I got to go to camp there all summer, and then started going to school in Sandwich, and grew up, went to junior high and high school here. Yep.
Were any of your relatives in the military, and if so, did that affect your decision?
My grandfather was, but I never even really knew him. And two of my grandfathers were. One of them I know pretty well. I don't know them not very well, but it didn't really affect my decision too much. It was more on my, personal, where I was personally, I guess, affected it more than anything else. A lot of my cousins now are in the military too, but I was one of the older ones, so one of the first ones to join any branch of the military.
How did your family react to you joining the military?
My mother was not very excited about it at all. She was really nervous right off the bat, especially, the timing. It was, so I was a freshman in college during September 11th in 2001, and then the following, fall? Yeah, the following fall was when I joined, so it was, about a year later. So it was no question on what was, going down in the world at the time, so my mother was not very excited about that, but it was one of the things that I felt like it was one of the reasons why I joined as well, so it was something that was important to me.
Yeah.
But so my mother was not happy, and I had a brother and a young sister at the time, but my brother was probably cool with me going off on my own, and him getting spotlight at home. But, yeah, so mostly my mother was not excited about the situation, but I just did some reassuring.
How did you feel when you were first getting deployed?
I was surprised. The way that it worked out was so I joined in the reserves. You go through all the training and everything with all active duty and reserves are all kind of mixed together and go through the same trainings. And then after you're done with your final school, so the armory school, that's when you return back home and then kind of settle back into your life, and then you go to the drill weekends. So you'd go 1 weekend a month, and then at some point in the year, usually in the summer, you do like a 2-week training at some place in the country. So I finished my training in October, so the time coming back to drill was in November, and that drill was the Marine Corps ball, so it was just a big party. So we didn't really do any real training. So then after that was December, and so that drill was Toys for Tots. So we did all sorts of Toys for Tots stuff. So that was a great drill too. I always loved the Toys for Tots one. And then the following month is when I ended up doing my 2-week training. And they sent me to Hawaii for 2 weeks to do some training there. And then as soon as I came back from Hawaii, I got a call that I was being activated from there. So that I had like 2 weeks before I was being activated. So it was kind of a surprise to me. I wasn't really expecting it, and I kind of got like lulled to sleep a little bit. I was just like back in my own life. I started working full time, and I was going to school again part time. And then I'd go to the drill weekends, and it was the ball, so it was a party, and it was Toys for Tots, which was great. And then I went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and then I came back and found out that I was getting deployed. So I was surprised, but at the same time, I wasn't. I'm happy that it happened so quickly after I was done with the training. So everything was really fresh in my head.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite part of being in the military?
It's something that will probably come up later on in some of the questions too, but just the friends that I made, I think was the most memorable part. It was my favorite part when I was in the Marines. But I made a good group of friends while I was there, and then we've remained somewhat close. Keep in touch a little bit, but a lot of them are all over the world right now too. So I think that's definitely my favorite part of being in the military, is the relationships that I formed and then still have now.
Do you have a most memorable moment while overseas?
There's a few memories I have that stick out. I'll remember the first night that I got to the base where we were staying most of the time. There was already a group of Marines that were there, and we were replacing them. So there's like a week or two overlap where they kind of show you a little bit of the way things work, and then you kind of take whatever they had that worked well and move on from there. Mm-hmm. But so it was the first night that we were there. They showed us where we were sleeping in these little trailers. They were pretty nice, but then all of a sudden we started to hear, just a boom, 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 and we didn't know what was going on. We got kind of scared, all the newer guys, and so then all the older guys that were there started, saying that we were getting bombed and there were mortars coming in and this and that and rockets. So we all did whatever our training was supposed to do. We started covering up and getting our flak jackets and helmets on. And then we looked up and they were all laughing at us because apparently it was outgoing. So it was our artillery guys that were right next to where we sleep, essentially, that we found out at that point. But they were shooting out into the city. So it wasn't anything coming in, but it was going out. So we didn't have to worry about it, but it was just loud. So they kind of tricked us a little bit there. So that was like a memory that I had about just initially getting in there. A couple other things stick out from like the day-to-day kind of things that went on, but I got to go for a little. It's called like R&R, rest and relaxation sort of thing. We had a couple opportunities throughout the deployment to go to Qatar. It just flew us to Air Force Base in Qatar, which is further south on the Persian Gulf, and we'd get to like go out in the city, and I took this like safari ride on these Land Cruisers that were all like jacked up, and they had these local guys that were driving us around like the Fast and Furious through the city, and then just took like hard turns off into the sand dunes, and we're like sliding down the sand dunes. It was really cool. And they set up this big lunch for us underneath a tent, like a traditional Middle Eastern like cookout sort of style. That was pretty cool. I got to swim in the Persian Gulf there. It was really warm and salty. And then I had a birthday over there too. So that was kind of fun with my friends. And I was over there for the 4th of July too. And we kind of fixed up. The base that we were on used to be sort of like a palace. So we kind of secured it a little bit more around the palace, and then we renovated one of the pools that was in there originally. So then we had a big pool party for the 4th of July. So we got to we had like a little cookout and swam in the pool and everything. It was pretty fun, horseshoes and everything. So that was a memorable moment too. Yeah, I think that was a good group of things to remember.
What was the hardest part of being in the military?
I mean, you're asked to do some things that you typically would think that you wouldn't do. There's a lot of it's not necessarily like the physical kind of challenges that come along with it. There's I guess I'd say maybe like some like morally there's some things that that I guess would happen that I would think that I wouldn't really it's different from just everyday life. You wouldn't really expect to see certain things or be asked to do things that you would if you were just like at home on the street. So it's a different, like even like through the deployment mostly is different than anything else too. Like even as far as like being home and like throughout the training and everything. And then for the drill weekends and a lot of community service based stuff with the reserves, which is awesome, and I love that. But the deployment definitely it definitely creates some challenges as far as you kind of develop two separate lives, two separate ways of thinking, and sometimes it gets hard. It's challenging to get it like back together, kind of keep it separate for a while. But that's probably the biggest challenge that I have had.
Are you still in touch with many people you met through the military?
Yeah. I have a couple of really good friends that actually there was a group of 4 of us that were in the reserve unit together, and we deployed together. So we attached to a different active duty unit from California. So they sent us out there, and we joined their unit, their group, and we deployed with them. And then, so we were all together, and we worked in the armory, and we would do, a couple of different missions that we worked on together. And then, when we came home after that deployment, I stayed in our reserve unit with three of the other guys, and then, or two of the other guys, and then two of them went and changed their jobs, their MOS, and joined different active duty units. So they, one of them went to, into the EOD, to explosive ordnance disposal. So they're the ones that would find, any roadside bombs or any devices like that, and they'd call them in with however they would do it, with robots or dismantle them. So he went through an extensive training before he was deployed 3 times with them to Afghanistan. And then another one of my friends went. He joined active duty and stayed with the same job, but joined an active duty unit and ended up going and living over in Japan, in Okinawa, for about 4 or 5 years. And then he recently moved back to the United States, but he's down in North Carolina. And then one of my other friends from that group stayed in the active duty unit, and he's kind of, or in the reserve unit, and he's kind of risen to be the leader of that unit. Essentially, he's the highest ranking Marine there now. And all of those, like that group of, it was 5 of us. I think it was 5 of us. I'm trying to think now. All of the 4 other ones are still in the Marines in some aspect, and I'm the only one that's not. But I kind of, I don't know, didn't fit totally in with their life plans, but we were really close together. So we get together mostly for each other's weddings now. It started with mine, and then there's been 3 other ones. But everybody's busy now. Everybody's got, one of them has, I think he has 5 kids, the other one has 2, and one has 3, and one just got married and has 2. So kids keep us super busy now. So try our best to get together, but it doesn't happen much.
How has being in the Marines affected your life today?
I think it's definitely created, it's added, another sense, like a sense of pride that I have, and I'm able to speak about, and it gives me opportunities like this to be able to talk to you, and just share my experience, and relate to all sorts of different people. I can, I have something in common with, any veteran that I'll see on the street that I'll be able to help out or talk to or reach out to in any situation. There's the bond that a lot of veterans have just instantly is really cool, and I'm glad that I'm kind of in that realm, that, like, brotherhood. And then I think that is probably the biggest, that sense of pride and that sense of camaraderie that I have, and just being able to relate to all sorts of different people, just being able to instantly relate to any veteran, or especially Marine, young or old, and then just being able to reach out and impact the community in some sort of way too, whether it's on my own or through Toys for Tots, or the VFW or American Legion, and the Marine Corps League and Hyannis. They're all great organizations that I should be more involved in, but there'll be time for that once I have more time.
What medals or citations did you receive?
I'll grab those later, just to show you the bar of them. But I never received any special personal medals or awards. Luckily, there's no Purple Hearts or any wounded in action awards. All the awards that I got were kind of unit, or some of them were personal, but mostly just kind of from where either you get different awards for deploying overseas, or being part of the Operation Iraqi Freedom or Enduring Freedom, and then you get an award for the National Defense Ribbon or Medal for just joining the military during a time of war. And then for you get some for being you would get one for being in like a good standing essentially for a certain amount of time, which it's kind of like getting an award for just not messing up. But I guess it's hard for some to make it that far. But I got a couple, just you get like a little. It's kind of like you get like a record. You get a letter in your record of a positive, citation or something like that. I got a few of those for just some little projects that we did on our deployment, being able to help out other units with a little bit of extra work that wasn't really expected. So it was kind of nice to be recognized for that when I was over there. Yeah, Rusty.
What was the hardest part of coming home from being deployed?
I guess kind of what I was kind of getting at before too is as much as I try, and I was one of them. A couple of us were more of the lighthearted guys, but you try to keep everything as light or loose as you can when you're deployed. But obviously there's a lot of serious situations that are going on, and the stress level is really high at a lot of points. So being able to try to process that and recognize that they were two separate kind of life experiences, but being able to effectively combine or bring that back into your life and have that be a healthy part of it. It wasn't easy at first. It was just like emotions would run high or low at certain times when you wouldn't expect it, but over time it kind of balances out naturally, and then just being aware of it, I think I was able to get more comfortable just being home. A lot of people have a hard time with it coming back from a deployment, and you never really know how it'll affect you, and the same experiences affect different people in different ways, and I consider myself very lucky to be able to have not had a huge struggle with an adjustment back into my life back at home. So,
what was your favorite part of being an Army?
I really enjoyed working with working with my hands and tools, and a lot of the guys that I worked with were like natural mechanics. Like they'll go and take a car apart and put it back together and fix it. And that was never really my thing growing up. But I like to. In high school I worked construction, so I loved working with my hands. I was always outside and stuff like that. And working with tools, but this was definitely on a smaller scale and more of a mechanical kind of aspect. So it's challenging, but I really liked that part of it. The units that I was in, so my job typically would be more. They break it up into like echelons, so different levels, and most of the units that I was in would work at like a higher level. So we would be fixing things that were really broken, or broken beyond a point where you'd be able to just fix it with a basic set of tools. So we'd really take things apart, or if things were broken, we'd have to get them from different weapons or something like that to try to combine and make something work. And I liked the creativity that you're able to use. There's a book, a manual that tells you exactly how to do something, but sometimes it's a little, whatever you're fixing is a little bit different than what the manual says. So you have to do things a little bit differently. So there's a set way to do it, but you can also use a little bit of creativity, and ingenuity, especially on a deployment when you have sometimes limited parts and a faster time where you have to get something done. and then a lot of guys that are a lot of other armorers. You can at like a lower echelon is where you'd work in an armory where mostly what they do is they just issue your weapons. If you're going out, like if you're on the base like in the United States, if you're going out to do like a training event or going out to qualify or to shoot your rifles to practice, they'll pass out the rifles at the armory. Like you'll come in, you have a card, so you'd exchange your card for the rifle, and they'd keep your card there, and then you'd swap it back at the end. A lot of those armorers would go on like a little bit of like a power trip and get, they'd stand inside the barred armored walls, and if you tried to pass your weapon back in and it wasn't like spotless clean, they'd just send it back to you and yell at you. And so a lot of guys don't have a good idea of like armorers in general, because mostly the guys that they deal with are like the jerks at the window that are sending them the weapon back. But at the higher levels, it's pretty cool, and you can do some cool things. There's one of my friends went on to become like a gunsmith, so he'll be able to like he machines and creates and builds a lot of the weapons, which is pretty neat. Rifling and some different barrels, so he got to do some pretty complex things.
How old were you when you were deployed?
I was 21, and I turned 20. I turned 22 there. Rusty. Yeah, so my birthday's in September. Rusty. Get down.
It's okay.
So I was there from March to October. Yeah, March to October. So I turned 20. I turned 22. Turned 22 in October. I mean September. Yeah, that's right. And then I came home and saw the Red Sox win the World Series in '04 for the first time. It's perfect timing.
Would you go back to the service now if you could?
If I was 20 years old again, yeah. So yeah, if I could do it all over again, absolutely. I think it was definitely what I needed at the time that I needed it in my life. It was exactly what it didn't put me on exactly the path that I thought it was gonna put me on, but looking back on it now, the experiences that I had and the things that I learned definitely helped me to get where I am right now. Originally I joined and I thought I was gonna be I was gonna do the crash, fire, and rescue, and I was joining to get higher on the list to take the state police exam. I thought I was gonna get into the state police, or town or local police, but then that totally changed, and the experience that I had definitely helped me to be a teacher in some strange ways, but it was I would definitely do it again. I wouldn't do it right now because my body would not be able to handle it, and I think it probably feels the way it does because of some of the crazy things that we were doing. But I just met somebody actually that I think he was like 35, and he was trying to go through the process of getting all these like waivers signed and everything because he's trying to join the army. I don't know why, but.
Who was the most impressive person you met in the military and why?
My friend Joey is probably the most he's the most impressive Marine that I ever knew. We deployed together, we were armorers together. He's the one that when we got back, he did that transfer, he changed the jobs to EOD, and then he had his deployments to Afghanistan with that group. And after that time, he re-enlisted again and stayed active duty and became a drill instructor in Parris Island. So he was training Marines, and after you're there for 3 years, and I think it's 2 or 3 years. But towards the end of that, he's leading the drill instructors as senior drill instructor. So you work your way up there, and then after that time there, he re-enlisted again and moved into it's the Marines Special Operations Command. So he's just constantly going for the next challenge, and it's incredible the stuff that he's been able to accomplish. I remember when we would do like a Marine Corps has their own martial arts program, and we'd go through the training in that, and we'd constantly be challenging each other to do like the next part of it and the next level to get the next belt. He was always the one motivating all those, and he's just lived his life like that, and it's very impressive. And he's somebody that I have come to admire quite a bit.
What was the most thrilling experience while overseas?
Thrilling. You'd go through a lot of like highs and lows, and you definitely have a lot of excitement and then a lot of downtime. Some of the fun things that I remember. I remember riding in a helicopter for the first time was awesome. I loved that. There were a lot of firsts, There's a lot of and being that young and kind of early in my career too, going through training, I had a lot of ideas of what it is to be like a Marine and be deployed. And when some of those things would happen the way that I would think that it would happen, it was pretty cool and exciting too. I'd be, all of a sudden I'd find myself on the top of a Humvee with a machine gun, and I'd look over and I'd see a reflection of myself, and I'd be like, wow, that looks pretty cool. And I'd be you'd be walking through a street with a lot of your friends, and you look around and you're like, this is exactly what I imagined it would look like. So that stuff was kind of exciting to kind of take yourself out of it and look at what's going on, and sometimes it was exactly what you thought it would be like, and sometimes it was nothing like what you thought it would be like. But those times were exciting. And then also some of the things that happened that were not quite as I expected. It was cool to have that a 4th of July party. They kind of surprised us with that. They brought out footballs and made a flag football tournament too. So that stuff was pretty cool too. Yeah.
What was your military life like?
What was my military life like? I guess it's kind of unique. My experience was a little, or I guess everybody's is unique, but having the reserve aspect of it, and then also active duty. The time in the reserves was pretty neat because I'd work during the week and during the month, and then just the first weekend of every month you would go. I'd go out to Devon's in central West of Worcester, right around Worcester, and they'd have some sort of training that we would do. It'd either be in the armory, working on some weapons. We were responsible for fixing the weapons from all the reserve units on the East Coast. So if they had anything that breaks to a certain level that they're not authorized to repair, they'd kind of send them to us, or we would send a couple guys over to their unit and be able to work on some things. Or we had some really cool events doing the birthday ball and Toys for Tots. I loved that. And then you had unique opportunities for those 2-week trainings, and a lot of times they did them in the summer because a lot of the reservists at that point were going through college, so you'd have the summers off. So they'd offer some cool courses to take, or some trainings, leadership training and stuff like that, which was really neat in the summer. I lucked out with that, with the first one to Hawaii, which was cool. And they didn't even, when I got there, it was me and somebody else. And when we got there, there was some mix up, which is not a surprise. And then, so they weren't really expecting us to be there. And all the weapons that were in the armory that were supposed to go and like inspect and fix them, there were none there. They were all out because the unit there took them out into the field for some exercise for the whole time that we were there. So we had a lot less to do. We got to do a lot more exploring than we expected. So that was cool to spend some time on that island. But my, it was cool to be able to have like a day-to-day like life at home and be able to work and go to school, and then also on the weekends to have that group of guys come together and kind of catch up on things and do some cool training. Whether sometimes we get to go qualify. We qualify in the rifle range once a year, or the pistol range, the handgun range. And do some like cold weather training. We go camping in the woods for the weekend. There was some fun parts of that for sure. So it was good to have both mixed together instead of. It would have been cool too to do the active duty part, but I'm happy I did it the way I did, to be able to get my school accomplished first, since I kind of started a little bit later after my first attempt at college.
Were you confused on how to join the Army, or was there someone to help?
There's the Marine recruiters will definitely help you through the process. So I was at 4Cs. I was taking a class at 4Cs in the fall, and that's when I saw the Marine recruiters at Subway, and they were dressed up in their dress blues, and I was sitting there at lunch in between classes or whatever, and I just went up and said hi to them, and then got talking to them, and then they obviously they're good at their jobs, so they will start selling you on different things and this and that, and so they definitely were able to help me through the process, and it went quickly, and maybe too quickly. They didn't let me know that my eyesight wasn't good enough for the one job that I thought I was doing, but I probably could have done a lot more research and stuff on my own, but I had a good recruiter that was able to do a lot of the small stuff for me, so that was good. He gave me a lot of information on what I needed to get accomplished to be able to kind of take the steps that I thought I was going towards. So he made sure that I signed the right contract to be able to receive the benefits that I wanted to for school, and then made sure that I got things done, and if I had to turn anything in, I turned it in on time. So he was all the guidance I had, I guess, and needed.
And what life lessons did you learn through the war?
Life lessons. So this is one that I think helped me in my career now as a teacher, and it's just that I take like the day-to-day, like small things a lot. They don't get to me as much as I think some people it might, because I have a bigger picture to look at and to view, things that are really are life and death important, aren't the things that you typically react to as life and death important. So once you kind of experience that, it really helps to put things in perspective, and that's definitely one area that one thing from the deployment and being involved in a combat situation and in a war is that it really does give you that perspective, and then it helps when you are in a situation where you might even feel yourself getting overwhelmed with something, and then you take a step back and you're like, this isn't really as big of a deal as I thought it should be. So you're able to kind of just see it a different way and focus on how to solve a situation without really getting overwhelmed and too into it. So that's definitely that is the big takeaway for me from that.